Okay. Good evening and welcome to the Town of Austining Legislative Meeting today, June 13th, 2023. Please rise and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Meyer,
Present.
Councilmember Fields to Will,
Here.
Councilmember Manicchio.
Here.
Councilmember Weiss,
Here.
Supervisor Feldman.
Present.
We're gonna have a departmental report from Assessor Michael Foissier. Sorry if I said it wrong.
No, you did great. Hello, let me just activate my camera here. Good evening, folks. Michael Foissier, the town assessor, recent, just the last 2 months, but it's been a wonderful experience and I'm honored to give this departmental report. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Let me stop my video and all right. Can you folks see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you very much. All right, so good evening. Thank you for your time over just a couple of minutes now as I report on the state of the assessor's office. I wanted to discuss, just touch briefly on our staffing, the work my office does to create and maintain the assessment role, and some of the various changes we've recently observed in the market and the number of exemptions that we've recently processed. There have been quite a few changes this year. All right. So the past year has been a pretty significant change year for the staff. The former assessor retired, as did our paralegal. The office suddenly lost a valued friend and assessment clerk of many years. However, as you're well aware, I started just a couple of months ago, and we were able to bring on an excellent part-timer just after we lost our assessment clerk. Additionally, we hired a full-time assessment clerk who has experience in Greenberg and will be a really valuable asset, not only now, but in planning for the future of the department, as she has many years ahead of her in this field. So we look forward to onboarding her on June 26th, and we'll sort of round out our staff to help us with any certiorari work, our exemptions processing, and a host of other administrative and assessment activities. So that's something we're looking forward to doing in the coming weeks and months. So what goes into making an assessment role? I'm not going to go into detail on all these items. I just wanted to bring up a few points on this list. For time's sake, I'll talk a little bit about the work we do with our vendor, Tyler Technologies. We calibrate models with them. We update our value trends based on sales and market reports. My office works with Tyler on other guidelines for cost and land values, just to make sure we're staying on top of the market. All of this has to get done in advance of producing a new tentative assessment role. And this would have been done in large part to my predecessor. So I have to give credit where it's due for this current role that we're working with. But I'll be assuming all the responsibilities for next year's role. We conduct a great deal of field work to look for any alterations, demolitions, and new construction. It's a critical part in producing our role. There are a lot of permits out there that are entered into our system, some which indicate a change to our descriptive inventory, and that does, potentially have an impact on value. So we've got to capture that. We have to work with New York State, the Office of Real Property Tax Services, for utility and special franchise properties. By law, they provide us with advisory appraisals that we adopt. We process sales and review their arm's length validity for the modeling purpose that I mentioned earlier. We also process a number of splits and mergers upon request. And towards the end of the spring, once permits are in and we have our tentative values set, we send out change of assessment notices and create a large mass mailing for taxpayers. The website gets updated with the assessment role, and we begin fielding calls on exemptions, on values, and of course grievances. I do want to mention that while exemption renewals and first-time applications, that's an annual thing that happens each year. This year, we experienced sort of an unprecedented volume related to the state's mandate to mail every taxpayer a senior citizen exemption notice. So we got a lot of applications, hundreds, in fact. I'll discuss that in a few minutes when we go over exemptions. All right, so just at the very highest of levels, this is the assessment roll, all 10,177 parcels across the 2 villages and the town outside. As you can see, 95% of our tax roll is actually taxable real property, just 5% being utilities or fully exempt or special franchise. Most of the town that is in that taxable group, that 95%, it's predominantly residential, but we still have commercial and condominiums carrying majority of the assessed value and taxable AV as well. All right. At a more granular level, you can see the assessment roll here broken down by the general property type. Residential accounts for approximately 67% of the roll. Condominiums and cooperatives, about 18% of the roll. Commercial at 6%, vacant land at 5%. And then we have a miscellaneous grouping of public services and other types of properties. In aggregate, they total about 4%. So we really have just 4 or 5 categories that represent the lion's share of this roll. Now, outside of the count, here's the breakdown by taxable town assessed value by property type. And it's not surprising that, 67% of the count, in this case, residential, is 68% of the taxable town assessed value. However, when you look at condos and co-ops, they accounted for 18% of the parcel count. On the previous slide, you can see they dropped to 3rd place. They're just 9% of the taxable AV. Commercial, because of their value that they tend to bring, based on the income approach, while they're just about 6% of the count, they carry a higher value. They represent about 16% of the town taxable assessment. So things change a little bit. We tend to find our income producing properties, they carry a higher value at the median than our residential. Something to note. And this slide provides kind of a growth rate year over year by property type. As mentioned on the change of assessment notice that we sent out to all owners, the values were up over 2022 by approximately 11%. And there was certainly variation across type with residential and vacant land, which are based on the sales approach. They came in at around 11%. Commercial and condominiums and co-ops, it was a little bit more modest growth. We use the income approach for those types of properties. While they carry a fair amount of value, their growth rate year over year was just about 7%. You're probably going to notice those large increases in community services. That was driven primarily by the land tables and cost factors that we use. We have to recalibrate them and update them this year based on industry data. So that was a decision made. Many of these properties are tax exempt, but some of them are taxable. I've gotten a few phone calls on them. And it's something just I wanted to mention since I've been receiving calls here. There's also a large reduction in industrial that probably jumps out at you at minus 13.7%. The reason for this is driven by a single property. We don't have many industrial parcels across the town, but the Phillip campus recently sold in at about 7 million. And it was a reduction over last year's 2022 value that we had to honor. And so that's the reason why you see a bit of a drop there. In terms of by village, by muni, if you look at the roll totals and percent change by village, we see the village of Ossining appreciating at a value that's it's a rate that's greater than that of Briarcliff Manor. This is a phenomenon not only here in Ossining, where we see a flight to affordability, but also across the county with more modestly priced homes selling at more aggressive prices than homes at the higher end of the market. Something a little counterintuitive that I've had to spend some time discussing with our taxpayers. We still have low inventory and strong demand, and having reviewed some of the industry literature, whether you look at Houlihan Lawrence or Douglas Elliman or other entities that publish market reports, free online, they suggest that values are still climbing. And the reason I included the quote down below is because this was just from April of 23. stating that while the number of sales, the number of transactions is down, the values are in the double digits. They jumped 13% for the river towns, and every municipality is different, but it just goes to show that the values are still up, still climbing, and there may still be growth for next year's roll. We'll have to see. Once we do the analysis next year, I'll have a better idea as to where values will go for the 2024 roll. In terms of neighborhoods, and forgive me, folks, I don't know if you can see this map. It's maybe a little small with the font, but I'm not going to spend a lot of time with it. But I basically was able to label neighborhoods with more than 80 parcels just to avoid like label crowding. It's already crowded enough, the map. So this could be reviewed for reference to specific areas, and it should align with the public document I posted on the assessor's page related to value change factors for every residential and commercial neighborhood. You'll notice that certain neighborhoods like the Hollow, Upper South Side, for example, it appreciated at 14.5%. It's one of the largest growth rates. I took a deeper dive into it, and this is attributable to the breakdowns of homes where it was almost 60% of homes in this neighborhood are 2 and 3 family. So while single family homes have increased about 11% or so overall, the demand for 2 and 3 family homes surpassed that, and the sale price per square foot and the year-over-year growth rates for 2 and 3 families, they're even more aggressive. This is what we're seeing in our data. And so I bring up data. I have to mention our sales ratio analysis. This is a standard test that assessors run, and also the state of New York, to make sure that the assessment roll of every assessing jurisdiction is at a particular level of assessment. Since we're a 100% assessment ratio municipality, the state runs its own ratio analysis, but I also conducted a small, a pared down version of it myself. So in order for us to maintain our status as a reassessment town at 100%, in order to get the state aid up to $5 per parcel that we're entitled to as a reappraisal municipality, we have to be within plus or minus 5% of the time adjusted sale price ratio. I came up with a 0.9652, so we're at about 96.5% of full market, even with these aggressive year-over-year changes in value on the assessment roll. We're still a little bit under 100. We're within the range of the state's allowance for plus or minus 5%, but you can clearly see how even the ratio study using 266 sales throughout, the town demonstrates that we could have even increased values a little bit more. But there are good reasons why we should be careful and cautious not to be too aggressive. The state of New York, their Office of Real Property Tax Services came in at 0.9568, so just even a little lower than ours. The price-related differential was 1.003, and the COD, the coefficient of dispersion, is 5. So, the reason I bring up some of those other stats is because I know we get questions on vertical and horizontal equity. Some homeowners, they have feelings that perhaps some parts of the town are overvalued or undervalued. But using these statistics, the price-related differential, that's the stat that determines, whether or not there's bias within, different price ranges. Do we undervalue higher-end homes and overvalue lower-end? Well, the answer, according at least to the state, is on our current assessment roll, no. Our price-related differential is 1.003, which is pretty much right smack dab in the middle of industry standards. So we do not have a regressive tax roll. And when you look at the coefficient of dispersion, that measures things like uniformity. It's a pretty tight range. 5 is pretty homogeneous. So this homogeneity is promising in that we maintain accurate values across all the neighborhoods and we don't practice selective reassessment. That can kind of cut both ways. We treat everyone fairly. In 2020, we had what we would call our major reassessment reappraisal. And in the interim years, from 21 through 24, we used market trend adjustments. The next major reval reappraisal is coming in 2025, but in those interim periods, we don't just select those properties that sold or had permitted alteration work to their properties for an increase. We apply increases as we see the market increasing in this case. So that's something I wanted to share with you folks. Exemptions administration, slightly different topic. It was a pretty unusual year from what I understand. We had several key changes to the exemptions for senior citizens, firefighters, and the disabled population. So the county, town, and village of Ossining adopted the higher income scale for seniors. But by doing so, we had more than 180 applications come in. Many of these folks did qualify under the new income limits of up to 58,500, 58,400. I apologize. The previous scale was 37,400. So as you can imagine, there were certainly a significant group of folks that fell within it, and now they're able to get the sliding scale exemption that they wouldn't have been eligible for perhaps in prior years. Firefighter exemption allowed county, town, and village of Ossining benefits. It provided it to those serving just 2 years, as opposed to the 5-year service requirement that we had in the past. And the number of disabled exemptions, they stayed roughly the same, but the sliding income scale would have been similar. They would have matched it to the senior citizen exemption. So, you know, it could change things in the future, but the count rate remained relatively stable. Here's the count, just to put some numbers to it, folks. The year-over-year change in senior firefighter and disabled, we had a 32% increase in our firefighter exemptions, 85% increase in senior citizens. I think we lost one of our disabled exemptions, and that brought the taxable implication down about 6%. So that one didn't increase. But this is the kind of analysis, the delta that we look at to see what the impact of tax policy is on the roll. Now, relative to the full total assessed value for the town, it's relatively minor. But again, it's a population that we look at and we track, make sure we're doing it the right way. So as of today, you're catching me at the thick of our grievance processing. Once we publish the roll on June 1st, grievances, they trickle in little by little, but at this time we've received just about 60. We're going to receive many more leading up to June 20th. The typical count from the records that I've seen over the last 2 or 3 years has been well over 400 filings. So likely at the end of this week, certainly on the 20th, on Tuesday next week, we're likely to see representatives and taxpayers file several hundred more. That's what we're anticipating. I do want to mention that new this year, the Board of Assessment Review, they published a grievance questionnaire that raises the bar, so to speak, on what the board wants to see from taxpayers and reps. The grievance form that the state offers, the 524, that's fine. It's not a bad form, but the questionnaire allows the board to get much more information and more detail that could help them in determining whether or not a reduction is actually warranted. They're asking for things like interior and exterior images, any financing considerations, special physical or locational attributes for the property that should influence value. So we'll see how that is received and if that changes things for the determinations made by the board. And finally, while the office has been doing great work and continues to do so, there's always room for improvement and modernization. So while I don't want to put too fine a point on it, moving forward, it is the goal of the assessor's office to onboard new staff and invest in training. We'd like to continue digitizing and modernizing the website in terms of the splits and mergers form, create the ability for folks not to have to download, fill it out, and then mail it in to us, but maybe submit online. We'd like to expand the effort to other documents. We definitely want to invest in more training and plan for the future. I know that a number of the folks on my staff, they will retire in the coming years. I'd like to work towards attrition planning that can help sustain the office and keep some of the institutional knowledge as we move forward. And we have another goal. We'd like to work towards better publication for education on assessment. It's a complex process, and some folks, they have a very sophisticated understanding of it, but there's more we can do to offer appointments and points of contact with our taxpayers to educate them and offer assistance in kind of unpacking all that complexity. So we'd like to do more outreach in the future. Folks, that is it for the presentation. Of course, if you have any questions, please don't hesitate.
I have a question. It's Matthew Weiss. Hi, Michael. Thank you very much. That was very thorough. Some of the neighbors have asked me, now that I'm on the town council, I'm an expert on things, but I'm really not. They've asked me something, maybe you can help me answer. And that is, when there's a new assessment, does that mean that taxes go up in the immediate next year, or only when the house is sold to a new owner?
That's a great question. So there are some states and some municipalities that they have a, I don't like to use the expression welcome stranger, but that expression does exist, where they don't change values except for when there's a physical alteration to the property or the property sells. Now, fortunately, in Ossining, that's not the case. We do a true reassessment. And this is, I was sort of tiptoeing, alluding to it before, but I'll be more specific. Whether your home sells or not, whether you do an alteration or not, you're still going to increase your value to remain at that 100% assessment level. That's going to happen every year, even if you feel your home hasn't changed at all over last year. Well, the market's telling us land values, home values are up. That's why, on average, properties went up at about 11%, the entire town. In fact, very few properties stayed flat. And no, not dollar for dollar. An increase of 11% in assessment will not mean an 11% increase in your tax bill. Quite to the contrary, all else being equal, if the levy stays relatively the same and the amount of taxable assessed value is increased, it's conceivable that rates stay the same or drop. But again, if you're at that 10, 11, 12% growth rate, it's very likely your taxes are not going to change very much over last year. That's what we believe.
How much was the Phillips property? What did they pay in taxes, and what's the difference there for everybody else to share that portion?
Sure. So I have to tell you, the taxes, I would have to defer to my colleague, Ms. Holly Perlowitz, because I haven't calculated them, but I will tell you the sale price was $7 million. And the assessor's office is sensitive when you have a very public sale like that to make sure that we're not creating too much risk and exposure for the town by maintaining an assessed value that's significantly higher than an arm's length sale price. So we did decide as a town, as an assessor's office, to go ahead and reduce their value some. The tax implication, I couldn't be exactly sure. I'd have to get back to you.
So it went from 22 to 7-ish?
Have a quick look at my notes here.
It's okay if you don't have it.
Yeah, I'd rather, I always say I'd rather be right than expedient. So I'll get back to you with the real numbers. Certainly in the next day or so.
I'm just wondering if that's going to be felt across the board. One of our main commercial properties, even if everybody stays the same as the growth rate for the town, losing one of our major commercial properties can really make a difference. And we all may see a little bit extra to make up for that loss.
That's possible indeed. The magnitude of that, I'd have to do a little bit more research to tell you exactly. But yes, that's accurate.
I think that property's been coming down slowly in value, so it won't be as hard a hit as if it all came off at once. Okay.
How you doing, Mike? Good job in the office there. Welcome.
Thank you.
Just a question on the wholly exempt properties. You have 435, right? Out of the 10,177. Is there a breakdown what those 435 are as far as what?
Yes. I mean, I will tell you, I wish I had that granularity. I wasn't expecting to go too deep into each of the counts, but it's a good question. I looked at it myself when I first started. I always begin looking at the role section 8 wholly exempt. These are largely not-for-profits, whether it's group homes, whether it's churches, synagogues, mosques. These are houses of worship. They could be various residences for non-for-profit. But that's generally what we see. The NFP and religious categories tend to be the predominant group in that wholly exempt.
And has that number changed from last year to now? Is it always maintained around that 400 area, or?
I believe that the count's pretty stable. And here's the reason we know, because we send out renewal applications for the not-for-profits, and they tend to respond. There's also another section, I think some government owned, that is not taxable. That's in that group as well. That pretty much stays the same, much of it from year to year.
Good. And then one more question that I get asked on the streets sometimes is there any way to cap the increase of the assessment value for a property owner for a year? So say there's a big 10% increase in their assessed value. Can there be a cap that they can spread it out over a time period?
So in our municipality, that does not exist. In New York City, they've adopted what's called transitional assessment increases or assessment limitations and caps. They have statutory restrictions on the growth of assessed value, or they take that growth and they divide it by 5 to phase it in over a 5-year period, not an ossining. The increases come in at 100%, whatever that increase is.
Got it. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Do you know what percentage the not-for-profits or the thank you, the non-taxable properties are of our total tax roll?
Yes, I do. In fact, that I did prepare. Roll section 8 represents 4% of the count of our roll.
So the exempt, I mean, completely exempt properties. Not
Those
just-
are wholly exempt, exactly. A taxable assessed value of 0.
So only 4% of our property, I would have thought with the prison, Mary Nolan, Mariandale, that would have been greater. Okay,
Yep. And that's why 95% of the count of our roll of the 10,177, 95% of them are taxable properties.
I just want to say that was a lot of information and you broke it down in a very digestible way. So thank you.
My pleasure. Thank you, folks, for bearing with me. I know sometimes I get a little graph and chart happy, but I appreciate it. Thank you.
I think we like those.
Yeah, we liked them.
Well, you've been doing a great job. The public seems to like you. And, you've really been answering residents and businesses' questions very thoroughly. I've gotten nothing but positive feedback so far. So, we've been very, very happy. And thank you very much for such a thorough and informative report.
Folks, thank you for that opportunity. Be well, take care, and we'll see each other soon. Thank you.
Liz, could you just tilt your microphone down?
I could. All right. Moving on.
We have supervisor and town board announcements.
All right. Okay, as we near summer, one of our most look forward to events is coming back. St. Anne's Festival starts June 20th through June 25th at the St. Anne's School Grounds. We have delicious food, thrilling rides, fun games, and exciting raffles. Don't miss it. It's a summertime favorite. Join the Ossining Micro Fund on the summer solstice, June 21st, 6:30 to 9:30 at 300 Riverside Drive, Sleepy Hollow, honoring Deborah Jacoby and Barry Jaffis for their work on empowering youth for financial stability. Join us on the enchanting occasion of the summer solstice as we pay tribute to 2 dedicated teachers. There will be a test of the Indian Point Siren System tomorrow, June 13th, Wednesday, 10 a.m., lasting for about 4 minutes. Even though they decommissioned the plant, they are still testing the system, in case you're wondering. I would like to take a moment to thank everyone who participated in the Protect Our Parks event that took place last Sunday at Ryder Park. This event was aimed at addressing the issue of invasive species. Volunteers came together to cut vines, remove invasive species, and plant native pollinators in their place, bringing attention to the importance of preserving our parks and protecting them from these harmful species. Thank you to all the volunteers who dedicate their time and energy to make this event a success. I hope everyone will make some time to see the beautiful garden, native garden, behind the middle field at Ryder Park. All right, our Ossining Juneteenth Council has been hard at work and they have a lot of great Juneteenth events coming up for this week. So June 14th at 7 p.m. at Sing Sing Kill Brewery is Juneteenth Trivia Night. Test your knowledge and join in the fun as we celebrate Juneteenth with an engaging trivia competition. Gather your friends and enjoy a night of friendly competition, great drinks, and a celebration of African-American history. Great. And Thursday, this one looks really good. I saw them practicing. The Ossining Public Library will be hosting a special Juneteenth event where they dive into the struggles of a family grappling with the aftermath of emancipation and the lasting effects of slavery. This play and its narrator will be Ossining Village historian Joyce Chirac Cole, narrating the captivating stories related to Juneteenth and its evolution. So mark your calendars and join them for that event. The fourth annual Juneteenth Festival celebration on June 18th from 12 to 5 p.m. at the Lewis Single Waterfront. This is the fourth annual. It was really fun for the last couple of years. I hope everybody comes down and joins. This event will commence Juneteenth, the historic day that represents freedom and liberation for African Americans. Come and enjoy a day filled with music, performances, food, and activities for all ages. On Monday, June 19th, from 5 to 7 p.m. at the Star of Bethlehem Baptist Church, a very special event will take place called The Telling. It will be led by telling author A.W. Hampton from Montgomery, Alabama, and historian Joyce Chirac Cole from Ossining. This event aims to guide attendees through the journey of African Americans from their challenges to their triumphs. The program will include inspired readings, music, scripture, symbols, and soul food for a truly enriching experience. So I hope everybody gets a chance to participate in some of these. Other upcoming events include the Ossining Historic Cemeteries Conservancy will be organizing a gravestone cleaning workshop on June 17th at Sparta Cemetery from 9 a.m. to noon. Volunteers will gather to clean and preserve gravestones, ensuring that our local history is maintained. We encourage you to join them for heritage. Join the New York Historical Society virtually on Wednesday, June 14th at 6:30 as they present Safe Haven, an exploration of the vibrant gay life in the 1950s, Cherry Grove, through captivating photographs and unique holdings from the Cherry Grove Archives collection. Additionally, the Town of Ossining Environmental Advisory Committee is still looking for new middle school and high school members. The EAC meets monthly and student participation is encouraged. Middle school and high school members are given opportunities to create impactful self-driven projects to help the environment, and all volunteer work counts toward community service hours. And then the big one, our fireworks are July 3rd at the Lewis Ingle Waterfront Park. So in case of inclement weather, the rain date is July 7th. Fireworks typically go off at 9:15, but the concert series and the food trucks start usually around 5:30 and the concert shortly thereafter. That's it for my announcements. Does anybody else have any announcements? Okay, hearing none.
Is there any, there are no liaison reports?
I do not have one.
Is there anybody from the public who would like to comment on any of the agenda items? Seeing no one, board resolutions, approval of minutes, regular meeting, May 23rd, 2023. Resolved that the town board of the town of Ossining hereby approves the May 23rd, 2023 minutes of the regular meeting as presented. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Approval of minutes, special meeting, June 6th, 2023. Resolved that the town board of the town of Ossining hereby approves the June 6th, 2023 minutes of the special meeting as presented. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
And a second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Approval of voucher detail report. Resolved that the town board of the town of Ossining hereby approves the voucher detail report dated June 13th, 2023 in the amount of $1,208,173.03. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
And a second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Agreement, Ossining Public Library. Resolved that the town board of the town of Ossining authorizes the supervisor to sign a hold harmless and indemnification agreement with the Ossining Public Library, 53 Croton Avenue, Ossining, New York, 10562 for the use of the library's auditorium on October 5th, 2023 for annual staff training. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
And a second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
standard workday and reporting resolution for elected and appointed officials. Be it resolved that the town of Austining 342 hereby establishes the following standard workdays for these titles and will report the officials to New York State and local retirement based on their record of activities. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
And a second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Temporary beer, wine, cider permit facilities rental, July 30th, 2023. Resolved that the town board of the town of Austining hereby authorizes the supervisor to sign the landlord authorization form for the New York State Liquor Authority for temporary beer/wine/cider license for Mr. Robert DeCrenza, who has filed an application for the rental of the Ryder Park Pavilion in the town of Austining on Sunday, July 30th, 2023. And be it further resolved that the applicant will provide proof of insurance and a letter in indemnity to the town in a form acceptable to council to the town. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
A second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Temporary beer, wine, cider permit for facilities rental, September 30th, 2023. Resolved that the town board of the town of Austining hereby authorizes the supervisor to sign the landlord authorization form for the New York State Liquor Authority for a temporary beer/wine/cider license for Miss Eileen Gilroy, who has filed an application for the rental of the Ryder Park Pavilion in the town of Austining on Saturday, September 30th, 2023. And be it further resolved that the applicant will provide proof of insurance and letter of indemnity to the town in a form acceptable to council to the town. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
And a second.
All in favor?
Aye.
There's no correspondence to received or filed for monthly reports for the month of May. We have Dale Cemetery, Supervisor's Office, Tax Receiver, Town Building Department, and Town Highway Department. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
And a second.
Favor?
Aye.
Is there anybody from the public who would like to address the board on anything not related to the agenda? If so, please raise your virtual hand. Okay, seeing no one, can I have a motion to adjourn to the work session?
So moved.
And a second.
All in favor?
Aye.
I'll let them go first.
So for the work session, we're going to have a presentation on the grant for the town of Austining. We have Millennium Strategies, David Jenkins and Scott Tom Durrani, as well as town planner Valerie Manostra here.
Good evening.
Hello, everybody.
Evening, everyone.
Hello.
Just introduce yourself to the board members that haven't met you.
Sure. My name is Dave Jenkins. I work with Millennium
David Jenkins.
Strategies as the Director of New York Operations.
I'm Scott Tompatrini. I also work with Millennium Strategies as a grant writer with the town as one of my clients.
Okay, I guess you can dive right in when you're ready.
So I can start off by just doing a brief outline of the grants that the town has pursued so far this year, and then we can sort of outline some of the upcoming grants that might be a good fit for some projects in the town. And then we'd be more than willing to answer any questions or pass it back over to the board for further discussion. So in terms of awarded grants that the town has received this year, I believe this is from December, but the town received a $600,000 award for the Angle Park Performance Space as part of the Village of Austining's DRI call for projects. And the other award that has been announced so far this year was from the DEC's non-point source planning program. The town received a $30,000 award for a beach restoration study at Angle Park. In terms of applications that have been submitted, but we are still waiting on the announcement of awards, the town applied to congressional appropriations through both the House and the Senate for the North State Road water main replacement. That project was included on the list for funding by both Representative Lawler and the two senators, Senator Schumer and Senator Gillibrand. So it's a good sign that it made it past the first hurdle, but the final list of projects will not be finalized until this winter. Otherwise, another project that went in recently was for the New York State Archives LGR MIF program for the digitization of the town's finance department and HCV records. I believe that program is actually announcing awards before the end of the month. So within the next few weeks, we should know whether or not that project has been awarded. And otherwise, we've also been handling the paperwork for a couple of DASNY applications, the most recent of which was for Cedar Lane Arts Center roof replacement through Senator Harkin's office. In terms of what's in progress right now, we are looking at a program through the DEC Hudson River Estuary Program for the construction of a kayak rental pavilion at Engle Park. The deadline for this program is July 12th, a maximum $75,000 award with a required 15% match. The next project we are considering is through the OPRHP Environmental Protection Fund Grant for Parks. The project we had discussed with Supervisor Feldman was a planning project to address drainage issues at Ryder Park. This is a project that the town applied to in the previous CFA cycle. It's a 50% match, and the deadline for this program is July 28th. Another CFA program that we are looking at is the DEC's Local Waterfront Revitalization Program for additional funding for the Engle Park Performance Stage. The funding for this will obviously complement the DRI funds for this project that have already been secured. For this project, we are waiting to be advised by the state whether the applicant should be the town as the owner of Engle Park, or if the main applicant would need to be the Village of Ossining, as the application requires a pertinent local waterfront revitalization plan, and the one for Ossining is authored by the village. So we've submitted an inquiry regarding that and should be hearing back from the state before the end of the month. The match for this program is 15%, and the deadline is also July 28th. And then finally, the last program we are looking at currently is the Urban and Community Forestry Tree Planting and Maintenance Program. This project deadline is a little further out. It's August 12th with a 25% match required, but it was just something we had discussed with Supervisor Feldman as a potential program of interest for the town. So at this point, we'd be willing to answer any questions about any of the projects we had discussed, or pass it over to the board for further discussion.
Okay, Valerie, do you have anything that you want to add, or?
Microphone.
That's right. Thank you. So I think we've been having, I've been at a few meetings with Millennium Strategies while we went through this. I think in terms of other grant projects that you've brought up in the past, Supervisor was dealing with food scraps, some additional stuff for e-bikes, also composting toilet maybe at Cedar Lane. Also, there were some thoughts on dealing with some other bathroom amenities at Engle Waterfront Park when we update that park as well. So those are a couple other projects that I think if future funding does potentially come down the path, that the town might want to consider looking for projects on that.
So, sorry.
I was just
Go
going to mention with the one of the things we're keeping our eyes on is the timing of when the environmental bond programs come out. We anticipate seeing that at some point in the next year. So it's just a matter of how quickly the state can ramp up those programs. But there's going to be quite a bit of environmental and sustainability focused funding available for application.
So one of the things I think our board, thank you very much. I think our board needs to do is identify what projects that we think we want to do and what projects we want to have in the hopper that we can't fund at this time, but that we can let Millennium kind of develop, or we could all work together to develop a proposal so that when these pools of money become available, we could really apply quickly. It's my understanding that both the senator and the Assemblywoman Levenberg and Senator Harkin may have some funding available shortly, and it's going to be one of those very tight deadlines. So making sure that we identify and formulate and get all the information together for these projects and any others that we want to talk about, and having these kind of ready to go at a moment's notice might put us in a better position to get funded for some of the things we'd like to do, but really don't want to use taxpayer dollars for. Sounds good. So.
Yeah, I would suggest if there are specific infrastructure projects,
Bigger ones,
right,
yeah.
bigger ones that typically grants, and David, you can weigh into, but typically grants like to see engineering like some conceptual engineering plans, like real construction costs, and those become problematic, especially when there's tight turnarounds. So that's something that the town board might want to consider as you move forward and look at your priorities, that if there are specific infrastructure projects, those might be something that you might want to consider getting some cost estimates and conceptual designs done sooner than later.
Okay, would that include the walkway transition or?
Potentially, yes. I mean, because I think a lot of the grants now are asking for, I mean, they consistently ask for cost estimates, designs, any engineering documents. So anything that we can do that would have those kind of projects, ready to go, especially if for some reason there are specific funding streams coming down that Millennium Strategies, identifies that, like, for example, the Environmental Bond Act might have these types of projects, then we can start looking at which projects you might want to consider. And if we do need to get some sort of like plans done, that might be something the town board might want to consider doing and undertaking.
Yeah, if the town's undergoing a charrette process and taking a look at a variety of different focus areas and priorities, having that list would be very, very helpful, so we can break down essentially what programs may fit. And on top of that, what needs to be done to be application ready. So to your point, Val.
Okay, and exactly what type of programs from the ones we've discussed fits into the Environmental Bond Act?
So it's yet to be determined. So the programs that we're looking at and applying for right now are your typical annual CFA programs that are available. The environmental bond, we don't have line of sight into which programs or what they plan to fund at this time. But it is quite a bit of money, and there will be funding available for municipalities to pursue.
I just had something quick to mention now that we're talking about all of this. So good evening. My name is Martha. I think we've met before, David and Scott. So just recently I started joining the Project Mover, and that was basically like a pilot program that was started with the Village of Austin to bring in the e-bikes. So we're going after, I believe that they're in the next steps with the village, and once they get that all started, the next steps will be coming over to the other towns that kind of participated in the program, just basically to see how the village went. So I know that when we were having our first meeting, we said that in the upcoming months, and specifically more towards next year, they're going to be looking at, different grants and projects for bringing in the e-bikes. So if you guys could look at also stuff like that or anything that may be available, because that is coming in towards the long term. So the more we know now, we won't be caught off guard when it comes in the future. Also, I think the other thing that Supervisor Feldman the other day was speaking with me about was about the charging stations. I know that when we originally brought over the charging stations, it had been through a grant, but we were notified this year that the grant has basically, it's done, it's completed. So now we're kind of responsible for the warranty and the maintenance of all these electronic chargers. And, we want to continue the program because it's a great asset to the community and the environment, but it's just, how could we continue covering the costs, and the warranties, I think it was a couple $1,000s, and, we're not bringing in that much revenue from the electric charging. I think that's pretty much it, right? Did we discuss it?
We have a few. Our
Yeah.
food scraps program, the bonding has, the funding has run out for that, but we find it to be very beneficial to both the environment and to the community. It's growing leaps and bounds, and we do not want to stop it. So currently the town is funding it, but if we could find some operational costs for that, that would be great. What else are we looking at?
I know that I believe I'd spoken to you, David, I'd emailed you about the ZEV grant for the electric bus that we had gotten. So I know, just let us know when the application is open. And I know that we received something a couple of weeks ago letting us know that there had been a couple of complications last year with that grant, which is why a couple of municipalities, including the town, hadn't really gotten that grant. So, just going forward, we want to just pay attention to that, so that way we make sure, because that senior electric bus was a big project that was ongoing, and, we want to get the money back for that.
Absolutely. We're anticipating seeing new solicitation come August. That's the timing that we expect. Now, whether it ends up being exactly that remains to be seen, but that's what we're hoping for. It's very soon.
So yeah, we have a lot of moving pieces and a lot of projects. but it's great. You know, we also have 2 playgrounds coming in. We have a grant for a new playground from Senator Pete Harkam for Ryder Park. And Senator Elijah Reichlin Melnick had given us one for Gerlach Park, and that's just finishing up now. So in the fall, we expect to be putting in 2 brand new playgrounds courtesy of the senators. We also are looking at doing fencing at our ball fields. I don't know what bucket that fits in. We have a staircase we need to replace, but I think the Scouts, the Eagle Scouts, are looking at helping us with that one. So we have a lot of projects going on. But I will think about the environmental ones. We have a lot of projects that would probably fit that bucket.
Right, and some of those smaller projects would also be good for, like, you know, some of the funding that you're getting from the assembly and also the state, you know, because sometimes they're just small, they might have small grants, right? So that might also be helpful to have, like, just sort of like your wish list and cost estimates ready to go, so that if some reason you get that email saying, do you have like a $20,000 project or $25,000 project, that you'll have those ready to go and just automatically identify that. I think is one of the things that I've seen in some other communities is that, you know, the cost estimates are off, and then all of a sudden you get funded for a particular project, and then you find out that the project is not, you know, it costs more than you anticipated. So those are, I mean, and that's something that, you know, at a future work session, we can always go through like projects and priorities and identify which, you know, and then start getting, you know, we can even have like your town engineer to provide some cost estimates, or, you know, just so that you have that readily available in case those opportunities rise.
And then the one pie in the sky, one that would go along with Project Mover is the bike lane along 133 and the connectivity with the North County Trailway, or Empire Trail, as I believe they're trying to have it be known. And that I know Millennium was working on that as well. And if you see funding potentials for that in the environmental one, I don't know if that'll fit a bucket, but it might. You know, we have a lot of the engineering done. The state did some engineering for us. So we have a lot of the pieces already completed. So we can relook at that.
Yeah, certainly. The best program for that would be the Transportation Alternatives Grant Program, which we're anticipating seeing solicited by DOT this year. So, and I agree, the town is definitely in a more competitive place than it was the last time that program was around. So it's well worth pursuing and is a good fit.
Interested in that. I think there was some prior emails about that particular project and some coordination, maybe I think it was with the state, so we can kind of circle back on that project as well.
Is the board, are you familiar with the project?
I have a question. Regarding this bike lane on 133. You said the DOT is
Did the engineering study.
they're doing the engineering study.
They
Okay. Okay. Is the DOT also? So I'm concerned about a bike lane on 133 when the condition of the road is still poor. I don't know if the DOT's investment in the engineering has an understanding of just the condition of the road that the cars go on.
That's a good question. We haven't had line of sight into that report, but it's well worth asking. Confirm
Thank
that.
you.
The two have to be complemented, there's no doubt.
For real.
And Matt, I know you weren't here, but there's a Millwood Go project, which is trying to connect the riverfront area and the river trail with the Empire State Trail, the North County Trailway. Right, okay, there you go. So you do know about it. Perfect. Okay. Sorry, just making sure you're up on everything. All right, so there's a lot of things to, you know, work on and keep an eye on, and we appreciate Dave and Scott for, you know, keeping their finger on the pulse of the grants that are available. We appreciate Valerie for calming me down when there's a lot of paperwork. And it just seems so overwhelming to get through the red tape to get to the end of the grant. We've been able to resolve quite a few of the grants that were in progress. I think we resolved like, 5 or 6 of them
Right, and we-
that had been mired down in red tape and finally got them worked out. We have a few more that are in progress that we've already done the work or done the project, and we really just need to get through some of the red tape to get our funding. And with that, I guess we'll continue on forward. Any questions?
No.
Thank you very much for joining us, and I'm sure we'll have you back at some point.
Thanks for having us. It's a
Thank
privilege
you.
to work with the town.
Thank you.
Night all.
Thank you very much for making the time to be here. I know
Bronca,
it's
would
a
you-
difficult night for you.
Would it help if I put, like, I know Millennium Strategies has a month, like they have that monthly report, but I can also put a list together of what we talked about tonight and maybe some prior projects and just so that you can circulate it to the town board and that can begin the discussion of priorities.
Great, that would be very helpful. Thank you.
I'm not sure that I told you, but we got the money for the senior nutrition bus already though.
Okay.
So that's one minus thing to do.
Excellent.
Yeah, the only last part would be just a ZEV grant and then we'll be done with the senior bus hopefully.
Meaning we get the ZEB is a rebate.
Yeah, it's the rebate that we were promised. And I think that with that, we're hopefully done with the senior bus, hopefully. Done. Yeah, so that's one minus off the list.
Yeah. Every time you think it's off the list, it comes back with another piece of paper, but we've gotten a bunch of them all done and completed, so. Yes, Valerie, that would be very helpful. So, thank you. All right, moving on. We were in our discussion last week about our spray park and throughout this week, our spray park is very popular right now. And with the heat, expected this summer, I think it'll be even more popular. In an attempt to keep it open to everybody and to have the community and our guests be able to use it. I don't think that we should be renting it. I mean, people are if it's closed just during camp, they get very upset. And I think letting one particular group rent it and having it not available to other groups is a mistake. And I think that it should be available for the community at all times. So I think that we should consider rescinding or removing the rental fee from our fee schedule. And for this, at this time, take away the opportunity to rent the spray park.
That's more in line with what you were saying last week, right?
I think it's a slightly different topic at this point, but I do agree with that. I think we should keep it open for our community.
Yeah, having those thoughts, this past week, I agree. But are we still going to have some kind of attendant or are we going towards that still or?
Yes, I had a conversation with Bill Garrison from the rec department today. Unfortunately, we are not able to get a county ranger. We didn't, they're all assigned elsewhere. So we're going to have a spray park attendant and a what do they call that? Recreation attendant for the park. So we're going to look for the person. There are people who have already reached out to say they might want to do this job. And the spray park attendant, he's going to rotate his lifeguards, the lifeguards from the village. We will not have to go through the county at this point because during COVID and during previous years, we've used the rec department IMA or agreements with the rec department to be able to fund this and to be able to provide the staffing. They have a greater list of staffing available and they can grab an attendant and grab a lifeguard much more quickly than we can create a title and get that done. It'll be August by the time the county gets around to saying, oh, lifeguard. So
That's a big step forward. And then also I just want to make sure that, do we visit the occupancy? How many can fit on the spray park? just
I
wanna
will
make
have the
sure.
building department come down and talk to the creators of the spray park and see if there's limits, or the health department probably.
Or what
has
they
a-
recommend, it's just a recommendation, what they feel is
They had
optimal
30,
occupancy for that area.
so the camps stick to 30 people total. During COVID, I think it was a lower number, but I think we can bring it back up to the 30 people at a time. Kids, I guess if they're really big kids, maybe not as many. That would be up to the discretion of the lifeguards at this point, but we'll give them some guidance.
Is
We'll
there an
make sure
age
to get them
limit?
some guidance.
Is there an age limit that you know of the spray park?
We have not ever enforced an age limit, if you want to go in with your kid.
Yeah.
Far be it
As
from,
long as the equipment can maintain a certain
That's-
weight
I
limit.
might
that's
be
the only thing
okay
I'm
with,
looking for.
with an age limit, because then I wouldn't have to go.
So, this is a big step forward. I think it's a good step to go forward this way.
right, and we're gonna make some nice bright reserved signs to put on both on the barbecues. In addition to having I did go down there in the kiosks, and they do have the little kiosks next to each barbecue area. And there was still a permit in there from last weekend. So they do put the permit next to the barbecue. It's not that visible. So I felt like, something lime green, laminated and, in the area would be helpful. And reprinting the rules are in the kiosks and in the main kiosk. It's a little faded, the paper that's in there, I think reprinting and having a little more vivid, and we'll put the concert series next to it, so people will look at it, and we'll go from there.
My feelings on the spray park kind of align with Angelo. I really do think we need to have a posted occupancy number. It's got to be, and I think any signage needs to be in English and Spanish. I think actually I wasn't even thinking about this before. I think an age limit for children, sorry, Greg, not adults, but I do think an age limit for children might be beneficial. Nothing against the teenage population. But I think the spray park is really geared more towards the younger part of our youth. And, I think also if we're going to keep it rent-free, that we want the people that are going to use it the most, have access to it the most. So I think we should maybe consider, an age limit for the kids, like 12 and under. I don't know how everyone else feels about that. But that's my 2 cents.
Right. I don't think traditionally we've had a problem with older kids. They're really not that interested in it. Maybe they'd go in for a moment, have a bucket of water dumped over their head and go back out to play volleyball or, sit on their phones most likely. Or go fishing. I don't know that we've been having a problem with the older kids, but maybe we can, in my mind, we would have the attendant down there, let them observe and see what's going on and see if it's overcrowded, if there are, bigger kids pushing younger kids, or if we feel like we need that limitation, or because then we can't have a, big sister bring in little kid and mom has to go in, or, dad has to go in. So
That is true.
my thought is to evaluate it and how it's being used and continue these discussions and evolve accordingly.
We can leave it all TBD.
Nice. Good. Yeah, makes sense.
Okay, so we'll remove it from the fee schedule. And, if we get a flurry of requests. Okay,
The only thing we're removing is the $75 an hour. Is that
yeah,
what-
it's
that's
it's
what
only
on
the
there, I think?
option to rent it.
Can I ask, does this apply to camps as well?
Our camp uses it. There was only the one camp that came down and rented it. But I feel like letting a camp have it and excluding other kids is a problem.
So no camps, so it's not going
The
to be
camps
able to be
can, the
reserved by
camps can come
anyone.
down, but they would have
They,
to
the
rotate. with-
kids would have
with the-
to comply with the general
Right,
population.
so,
Okay, so I just want to be clear on what the consensus is. No camps, no groups, no nothing can reserve this. It is for public use, general public use only. I'm not saying that. in
I
a
know
bad
we
way.
have, I know we
just
have,
want to make sure that we're, that, you know, and because summer camp is also coming up now. So I don't know if any
well,
arrangements have
the
already
town
been
camp
made.
reserves it on Wednesday. So they, I mean, they have the spray park on Wednesday. It's not, they're not renting it. That's just part of the
Okay.
But the public
recreation
will not be able
program.
to use it. The
The
public.
part, the
only.
public has never been able to use the spray park
On
Wednesdays during
Wednesdays.
camp, from 12 to 5, I think.
That would be only exclusive use would be on Wednesdays.
Right, would be our own recreation department camp. I'm actually not aware of how many camps have ever rented. I only know of one. I could be mistaken. There could be different camps rotating through. Are you aware of any?
No, I was just asking about camps generally because that was kind of what seemed like it started this dialogue because camps were the groups that more often than not were the ones reserving it.
Right, I know Kemi's group had reserved it, the Rising Above Boundaries camp. And, you know,
I mean, or we could put an option that it would be a special permit type use that would have to be applied for. So,
But I thought that's what we were removing though from
That's
the
what I'm
fee
saying.
schedule, yeah. So that'll be like mute.
I mean, let's see how it plays out. I think we just have to see how it plays out. And if it becomes an issue with the attendant and the rec department, I'm sure they'll come back to your office and
it's just that it's getting more and more busy and I want to make sure that the general public has access.
but right now, we're just deciding to remove it from the fee schedule, $75 an hour. For,
Right. And if we, you know, if you want, we can reach out to our local small camps and ask them, or we can reach out to Victoria and Dana and see what was done in the past. If there was a whole list of camps that used to use it, I'm not aware of that. But it's possible there were. So if you want to check that before we, you know, we can table this and vote on it. We're not going to vote on it right now anyway, so.
Personally, I think we can remove it and see if what kind of feedback we get. If we get some camps applying, then we could revisit and see if we have to add it back in. But I get the sense we're not gonna have many camps that want to rent it anyway.
If they haven't done it by this point yet, right? We're on June 13th. So, you know, if we're not in summer, it's imminent. So, you know, if groups didn't want to do that, they probably would have started reaching out. Except for, I guess, the town camp, which I guess is the distinction that we're making. But that's a municipal program.
Yeah, that's a municipal program.
So, and the other thing to Greg's point and, well, to everyone's point really is that the fee schedule just requires a resolution. So it's not like we have to go through a whole local law process every time we want to change this. So this could be changed as quickly as next week at the, sorry, in 2 weeks, because there's no meeting next week. Then if in the future the board decides to change back, it would really just require a Tuesday or a special meeting.
Thank you. Matt, everybody's good?
Good.
All right. That brings us to the end of our work session agenda. I would like to thank everybody for joining us. We will not be having a meeting next week because this boardroom will be taken up with our Board of Assessment Review. Talking to everybody who feels that their assessment does not match their value. So we will return on June 27th for a legislative session. I hope everybody enjoys their Juneteenth weekend. I hope everybody enjoys the summer, the solstice, the longest day of the year, and we'll see you then. Take care. Oh, and happy Father's Day to all of you fathers.
Ah,
Thank you for reminding me, Christy. Good night.
I'm sorry, we're gonna
Oh,
have
we have
executive
to,
session.
I'm sorry, we have to,
Motion to go into executive session for a
so-
matter.
it's been a long
So
time.
moved.
And a second.
All in favor?
Aye.
You could